Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
A few years later.
Supreme Court will allow the Trump administration to deny transgender and non-binary status on American passports. In a brief, unsigned opinion, the court said displaying passport holder sex at birth no more offends equal protection principles than displaying their country of birth. In both cases, the government is merely attesting to a historical fact without subjecting anyone to differential treatment. In yet another win on the court's emergency docket and over the dissent of the court's 3 liberal justices, the court granted Trump's emergency request to pause a district court judge's order that had required the State Department to issue passports to transgender and non-binary Americans that reflect a sex designation of their choosing. Majority decision is brief and unsigned. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson penned a dissent that lasts for 12 pages, joined by Justices Sotomayor and Kagan. And in it, she says that the court misunderstands the assignment with this emergency request. And she's making a procedural point here, but it's based on substance. And she says, in my view, the court's failure to acknowledge the basic norms of equity jurisdiction is more than merely regrettable. It is an abdication of the court's duty to ensure that equitable standards apply equally to all litigants, transgender people, and the government alike.
Today, the Supreme Court overturned a lower court decision and decided to allow the administration to ban trans people from updating our gender markers on our passports, or selecting an X marker for your passport. The Supreme Court takes very few cases every year, and they decided it was a priority to allow Trump to be pointlessly cruel towards trans people. So what does this ruling mean? If you don't have a passport, they won't issue you one with a different gender marker than what's on your birth certificate. And if you've changed your birth certificate, who knows? They don't think these things through.
Boy. So we got to talk about a woke mob meltdown over President Trump and the Supreme Court, handing them yet again another L, okay? Because in January of 2025, President Trump signed Executive Order 14168 titled, quote, Defending Women from Gender Ideology, Extremism, and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government, which directed that federal documents, including passports, recognize only 2 sexes, male and female, as determined by biological sex at conception. Now, this sounds like common sense, right? It is common sense, but because the left doesn't have any common sense, in fact, they don't even know what a woman is, they found this to be controversial, right? This is hateful, discriminatory, and a violation of the constitutional rights of trans people.
Okay, now I have to refer to this also. Ketanji Brown, our Supreme Court Justice, our Biden appointee. Now, when she was at her confirmation hearing, she was asked by one of the judges whether what the difference was between a man and a woman. Can she explain what a woman was? Now, if you are being appointed to the highest level of judgeship, and you can't judge between what a man and a woman are and the biological differences that are evident since the beginning of time, you're not fit to be a justice. Nevertheless, a Supreme Court justice. So I don't understand that. And then this other person, this trans person, gets on there and they're talking about gender markers and sexual preferences and ideologies. What does that have to do with who you are, your XYXX chromosomes? Absolutely nothing. Okay. If you want to have gender dysphoria and you want to go around and you don't want to have that treated, that's up to you. But don't expect a government agency to have to abide by what you think that you are or what you want to be outside of what's scientifically chosen, to put that on your passport. That's deception. That's what that is. But I digress. Let's continue to watch this. We're listening to a Black conservative perspective, I'm going to make sure I put the link to the video in the contents here. But make sure you like and subscribe. This is Renee from Kingdom Politico.
So there are no constitutional rights for trans people to identify as whatever they want on their passports and their official federal documents. Okay. And that's essentially what this directive states. Okay. Because it requires that new or renew U.S. passports list sex assigned at birth, right? And sex is not assigned, right? You are born male or female, okay, unless you have some medical abnormality. But that is few and far between, right? Generally speaking, yeah, you are male or female, right? That's just how you're born, okay? That's the way God made you. And the option for a third gender marker, X, and self-identification of gender was suspended. So you can't be using all of these woke identifiers on your federal documents. Now, you had some woke judges, federal judges, like, for example, Julia Kobik in Boston, rule in June of 2025 that the Trump-era policy likely violates constitutional rights, specifically equal protection, and blocked the administration from enforcing the policy for many transgender and non-binary applicants. An appeals court later declined to reinstate the policy. Specifically, the First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in September 2025 rejected the Trump administration's bid to restore the restrictive policy. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court actually just allowed the administration to continue to enforce the policy because the Supreme Court basically has decided that, this case is likely to succeed on the merits, right? AKA, what the government is doing here does not actually violate anybody's rights. Like, for example, they say, quote, this case concerns an executive branch policy requiring all new passports to display an individual's biological sex at birth. Displaying passport holders' sex at birth no more offends equal protection principles than displaying their country of birth. In both cases, the government is merely attesting to a historical fact. They're treating everybody equally. They're simply acknowledging a historical fact, right? That biological sex is a fact, and you're not treating anybody differently when you do that, okay? Quote, on this record, respondents have failed to establish that the government's choice to display biological sex lacks any purpose other than a bare desire to harm a politically unpopular group, nor are the respondents likely to prevail in arguing that the State Department acted arbitrarily and capriciously by declining to depart from presidential rules that Congress expressly required it to follow. For these reasons, the government is likely to succeed on the merits. So basically what the Supreme Court is saying is that as this case moves through court, it is likely to succeed. So they granted a temporary stay, basically a temporary victory, saying that they're probably going to win once this case actually reaches the Supreme Court. Once we actually hear it, they're going to win. So therefore, we're going to just go ahead and allow this to happen, right? We're going to allow the government to enforce this policy. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this news clip so you guys can learn a little bit more about what happened here.
And the Supreme Court siding with the Trump administration in its push to ban Americans from identifying as transgender on their passports. The Justice Department hailing it as a victory. And Alexandria Hoff has more from D.C. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Dana. In a 6-3 decision, the court found that displaying a passport holder's sex at birth no more violates equal protection to displaying a person's country of birth. It continues that in both cases, the government is merely attesting to a historical fact without subjecting anyone to differential treatment. The decision undoes a lower court's order that stopped the Trump administration from removing the X option from passports. This now also allows the requirement of listing biological sex to be enforced. Now, in her dissent, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson argues that the government was unconvincing as to why it needs to enact this policy immediately. Quote, it offers no evidence that it will suffer any harm if it is temporarily enjoined from doing so, while the plaintiffs will be subject to imminent concrete injury if the policy goes into effect. So the X option on passports was the product of the Biden administration. The White House maintains that that brought unseriousness to government documents meant to accurately identify people. Attorney General Bondi celebrated the emergency relief granted to the government, writing, in other words, there are two sexes, and our attorneys will continue fighting for that simple truth. The fight is not over, though, because this is not a final ruling. It simply allows the new passport policy to continue while the cases play out in lower courts. Dana.
All right, well, keep an eye on all of that, too. Thank you.
Yeah, so you see, now you heard that. Now, unsurprisingly, the trans activists, the woke revolutionaries, they are very, 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 very upset about this ruling, okay? They're crying hate, discrimination. The Supreme Court doesn't want trans people to exist, yada, yada, yada. We all know how these people react when they don't get their way.
You think if I walk up to you at the airport and show you an F on my passport, you're gonna let me get on that flight? Like, you're not. When I first started transitioning, I remember going into a bar with my ID and having someone tell me that it wasn't me because it was a woman's ID. Ever since that happened, I was nervous to go to the airport, I was nervous to travel, I was nervous to do anything because my ID had an F on it. So I felt immediate relief when I got an X on my license, finally. The Supreme Court just ruled to resume Trump's plan and requires people's sex assigned at birth to be displayed on their identity documents. Not only is this going to take me back to the place of fear and anxiety that I was in 5 years ago, it's undoing a 33-year-old policy that allows people to have accurate gender and sex designations. How? Out of everything that's happening in the world right now, is this an emergency in the Supreme Court? This is an organized effort to humiliate and endanger trans, non-binary, and intersex Americans. And I just wish everyone could see how it's all just another desperate attempt to concentrate power in the hands of a few cis, straight, white men. This is all a distraction. Trans people are being scapegoated so that the administration can push the limits of just how complacent an entire society can be to their benefit. Y'all want to let them?
I am so sick of hearing these terms. Cis, non-binary. What the heck is all of that stuff? Anybody else tired of hearing that nonsense? I mean, what the heck? You're either a man or a woman, male or female, girl or boy. How many of you look at an application, get an application sometimes, you're at the doctor's office, you're at a business office, and they give you an application to fill out, and it has all of these different designations: cisgender, non-binary, trans male, trans female. I just block all of that stuff. Female, period. Don't ask me anymore. To me, that's offensive. Okay? And this person is talking about, oh, we're trying to hate you and go back there. I didn't even realize that this was a thing that had been on the passport, that was allowed on the passport for 33 years. Thank God somebody's in office to stop this craziness. Okay? It's as crazy as me being trans Canadian. When will it stop? If we can change our gender on a pass, why can't I change my country of my country where I'm from? I don't want to be a United States citizen. I'm trans Canadian. What if I wrote that down? How would that work? Let me know in the comments. Now let's continue.
I'm so proud of my transition. I'm so proud of all the trans people. Can you just imagine the amount of resilience it takes to choose to be yourself when these are the consequences? Trans people are fucking awesome.
Please wait. Please don't scroll. Especially if you're LGBTQIA or an ally, please listen to the end of my video. Yesterday, the Supreme Court of the United States of America, in a 6-3 shadow docket ruling, voted to uphold this current administration's assault on transgender rights by enforcing policies that require our gender markers on our passports to be aligned with our assigned gender at birth, which is on our birth certificates. This is a crushing ruling for the transgender community because it means anyone who got their passports during this current policy limbo may see their passports revoked entirely. It means non-binary people who have the X marker on their passport may see their passports revoked entirely. It means anyone whose birth certificate's marker does not match their passport's marker may see their passports revoked. It means crossing the border could result in being detained and having your passport confiscated and being denied re-entry into the United States when you return. It could mean the TSA and airports denying your passport when you're trying to travel. It's opening the door to more and more assaults on transgender communities. And there's no reason for it. It doesn't protect anyone. It doesn't help anyone. It slowly, truly, all it does is aimed at hurting us. Yeah. And it's just getting worse. Today is November 7th, and now the Supreme Court is going to decide whether or not they want to take up the case to overturn same-sex marriage. We are being attacked in every direction for no reason other than hatred.
Well, I guess we couldn't have only good news this week. The Supreme Court of the United States has decided to do Trump's bidding by allowing the Trump administration to block trans applicants from having a proper gender marker to reflect who they really are, as if it wasn't already evident enough that their heads are firmly up Trump's ass. The Supreme Court brief, which is, by the way, unsigned because they're a bunch of cowards, says that this no more offends equal protections than displaying someone's country of birth, which is straight up lies. Let's be real here, because it is purely meant to humiliate trans and intersex people in the process. And it also puts us in danger when we travel. For example, if I travel and my passport says M, guess what? In countries where it is not safe for a trans person, we can get into massive trouble. But even straight up in the United States, if you have a passport with the wrong gender marker, depending on which state you are and you need to use official documents, it is meant to out you. It is meant to put you in harm's way. Given that the 3 liberal justices publicly dissented, you can tell who the cowards are that decided to put a target on trans people's back on behalf of their daddy Trump. And this Trump policy is actually going against what's been normal practice for the US government since 1992. We've been able to update passport gender markers for over 30 years, and Trump is trying to undo this progress that we had done. So if you're trans right now, don't go and update your passports, given the new Supreme Court ruling that would force you to have the wrong passport with the wrong gender marker now. This was a ruling that we were expecting, given that the Supreme Court lacks any sort of integrity, which is why municipal elections and local elections are important, because municipalities where they're sanctuary cities allow trans people to live freely without having wrong markers be a problem when you're trying to get administrative stuff done in your town. So I'm sorry to trans people, but right now, do not update your passports. You will get the wrong gender marker because of Trump's little lackeys who can't help themselves but do whatever Trump tells them to. And I'll say it again.
No, because they're doing the right thing, okay? There shouldn't be markers, all right? No one should be subjected to try to find out exactly what you are. And really, it's for your protection. God forbid you have a medical emergency and somebody's looking at your passport, right? And they see that you have a gender marker that says that you're female and they think that you're male. And a gender marker, I'm sorry, that says female and you're male. And they try to treat you as a female or vice versa. There could be harm. Let's say they give you too much testosterone or some other kind of a stimulant that needs to keep you alive. That's basically, for women, but because you're a man, your body reacts differently to it.
Again, I've seen Crunchwrap more supreme than this Supreme Court.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. This situation right here is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that these individuals are not fighting for equal rights. They're fighting for special rights and privileges, because there is no other situation I can think of that highlights the fact that, again, these individuals are fighting for special rights, then the special right and privilege to mark your sex as anything that you want on your official government documents, despite the fact that you were born male or female, okay? And sex is a biological reality. You're either male or female, okay? I understand there's cases, intersex cases, but for the most part, 99% of the time, okay, male or female. And that is how you need to identify on your official government documents, okay? And you can't get the privilege, right, the special right to do that in a way that, again, is not accurate with what we define as sex, okay? It says, what is your sex, okay? Sex is male or female. That's it, right? It is what it is. And, these people boohoo, whine, and crying. At the end of the day, you don't have a special right. This is not a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. You're not being discriminated against. If this administration says that, hey, you can't do that, you can't do it, right? It is what it is. Now, hey, if a Democrat gets back in office, they'll change it, right? They'll change it. But as long as a Republican is in office, you have to stick to the reality of biological sex, right? It's really that simple. It's really that simple. So again, what these people are crying about, oh, it's hatred. Oh, we can't travel. Oh, they're coming after us. No, it's just simply acknowledging reality. And if acknowledging reality is hateful and bigoted, then hey, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. So this is a win for the Trump administration. And we're going to see what happens with some other cases coming up here in the Supreme Court, especially when it comes to this case about gay marriage. We're going to see exactly what happens. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.
5 Investigates has uncovered.
So tell me, what do you think about this? I think this is just common sense. I don't know. But let me know in the comments, okay? Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Do you think that Trump should put back on legal documents whether you are actually a male or female? Or do you think that the markers, the sexual markers, depending on what you want to be or what you call yourself, should stay on the passports? Let me know. And if you're feeling generous, you can buy me a cup of coffee. That will be in the link. Also, the original video will be in the link as well. All right? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.